tweets. I got bullied into creating this account, and I kind of forgot. I don't even know the password to log into it. So thanks for pointing that out. It's probably better just to either get rid of it or erase it, do one or the other, because it's probably looking pretty bad. So, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Mike Emo. I'm a software developer for about 16 years, 17 years here in the Twin Cities. I have my own consulting firm, and within the last year or so, I've been considering this for quite some time, but within the last probably 3 months, I've really started to focus on kind of an industry shift and focusing on what I think there's a big market need around test automation. And after talking to many managers, I'm seeing a lot of managers aren't really buying into the whole automation movement, and which kind of threw me. Like, why is this? And so listening to these people talk about, why they're so skeptical about test automation made me go back and think, what could I offer to address their concerns? How could I ease them into automation? And so I gave this pitch yesterday at my current client based on some prototype that they had me write, and I'm thinking of using this as an actual sales pitch for other calls that I actually have scheduled here in the coming months. So to get started, I want to just talk really briefly about the history of development. So actually, I'm going to back up. So I want to talk about this goal. You've got new features. You're developing a new product, okay? And you've got some new features that you're developing. And this falls under the category of get it right. Get these new features right. Now, if you deliver a new feature to a client and it's not quite right, they can forgive a new feature that's not quite right. What they can't forgive is an old feature that they depend on breaking. Okay, just leave well enough for now they're frustrated. So when it comes to a legacy or an existing functionality, this falls under the category of keep it right. So get it right, keep it right. So when it comes to test automation, it's recommended that most of your effort be focused on the keep it right. I think a lot of people make the mistake and they try to automate to get it right. When it comes to get it right, you really do need manual testing on the get it right. You need somebody looking at it. Are things lining up right? Is this in the right order? Is the workflow correct? And a lot of times your get it right, it's changing constantly. And so to try to automate that is going to be a big waste of time, a lot of retries, starting over, which brings me to my next point, which kind of talks about sort of the evolution that the software side has gone through. So as I mentioned, I've been a developer for 16 years, and 10 years ago, pretty much every piece of software was written in this manner, which I call the iceberg development, where the first 6 months of development, developers are blowing out this entire database. Even though they've got limited understanding of the requirements, they're going to blow out the entire database and write this entire data access layer, right? Figure out all their logging, all their infrastructure, all this stuff that they can't show to management. And 6 months into this thing, can you show me anything yet? Not just be patient, be patient. So then finally 6 months later, management gets a chance to look at this, and they realize they made some wrong-minded decisions back in the days, and they got to do another restart. And so this was like the way it was done. Well, over the last 10 years, there's been different approaches. Like, how do we solve this? How do we correct this? And a lot of it's been around process, like Agile. Before Agile, there was iterative. Right? We're going to do iterative development. We're going to do Agile. We're going to do test-driven development. We're going to do behavior-driven development. If you look at really what they're trying to do, they're trying to address this iceberg issue. And instead of taking it from the bottom up, we're going to take it from the side, go from the UI all the way down. Let me see what that looks like. Let's just define, we got one feature, let's just define the database just enough for that one feature. Let's get these 3 tables, let's get the data access layer for that, and let's show something. Let's demo this to management, right? Well, so this is an evolution that software development has gone through, and that test automation is just beginning to go. And the clients that I've worked for that are trying to do test automation, they're dealing with this. And I'm not saying this is the case everywhere. And I'm not saying it's the case in your shop. And it's certainly, for example, Microsoft, it's the complete opposite of what I'm about to describe. But in general, there's sort of a pattern where you've got these test automators. Now, these test automators, they're not quite developers, and they're not manual testers. And if you took these test automators and move them over to development, they would be junior developers at best. Okay? Now you wouldn't have your junior developers define your flagship product, but yet you've got junior developers sort of defining your test automation framework. And what we're seeing is that the test automation efforts are kind of being handled in sort of a waterfall approach, and a lot of time is spent on developing this whole framework, mapping out the whole site. And what happens is it looks an awful lot like an iceberg. And so the approach that we take to solving this automation, I think, would benefit if it followed some of the practices that are occurring on the actual development side of things. So, for example, behavioral driven development, write your tests as though they were real software, and you were going to use test driven development on your tests. Right? It's kind of like Shakespeare, a play within a play or something. So what's the plan? So here's another plan. So this again goes back to the old keep it right. You got two databases. You got your dev database, and you've got an exact copy, a duplicate of that database. And then you use your legacy system to run a workflow. So you're gonna create an order. You're gonna purchase a product. You're gonna submit it in, but whatever your legacy system does, you run that process. Then you use an application. For example, Redgate is a product that I've used, where you compare the two databases and say, show me everything that workflow did to my database. So now I know what changes I should expect. And you take that report and you save it off to the file system, and so it's sitting there waiting to be used. Then automate, rolling back that database to the known state. You run that exact same process in your new system and executing the exact same workflow. Now at this time, I've written some proprietary software, which will go through, I call it a state machine. And the state machine will take that report that was generated in the previous step, and it'll go check the database to verify that this new system behaved exactly as the old system did. And then it'll identify all the differences and create a report so that you can go and say, okay, there are differences here. Why are there differences? And what am I going to do about those differences? If there are no differences, the test passed. And the idea here is that you can run these you can go through this process if it's highly automated. You can go through this each sprint, every other sprint, or on an as-needed basis to verify you haven't broken any legacy functionality. So again, the objective here is to get it right, keep it right. Now, there are many different approaches to keeping it right. Today, in conclusion, what I've shown you is one approach, doing this legacy database comparison. There are other approaches, and if you're interested, I can certainly come and meet with you, and we can talk about those as well. But in conclusion, thank you for your time, and I'll wrap it up now. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you.